Welcome to The Confidence Conversation, hosted by Michelle Beatty. The Confidence Conversation is a series of rich dialogues and insights shared by a variety of professionals in different industries as they unpack their secrets to being confident while sharing the building blocks, career wisdom, and their entrepreneurial journeys. The Confidence Conversation is an expansion of the blog CareerTipper.com.
Hello, and welcome to The Confidence Conversation, the podcast inspired by the blog CareerTipper.com, where we share rich dialogues and insights from a variety of professionals in different industries as they share their career and entrepreneurial wisdom, journeys, and secrets of being career confident. I'm your host, Michelle Beatty, creator of CareerTipper.com. Today's episode, we're featuring Pat Matthews, a game designer, writer, software programmer, and product manager. Pat is going to share with us his adventurous journey to merging all of his passions into a profitable career that he finds fulfilling and rewarding. Pat, welcome to the Confidence Conversation.
Hey, thanks for having me, Michelle. It's great to be talking to you.
Thank you. So, Pat, what motivated you to combine all of your professional passions and expertise into a career path that you pursue simultaneously?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, it didn't come about as something that I planned. I have the three things I do. I design games, I write, and then I work in the software world, whether it's development or now I'm the product manager that got chosen. And I've always loved games, I've always loved writing, and I've always loved software. And for me, when I like to do something, I like to go all the way in. I don't like to just go part way. So, for example, when I was growing up and reading, and I would lose myself in these books. And by the time I was 12 or 13, I realized I wanted to not just be losing myself in other people's books, I wanted to start writing my own. And so I started actually working on my first book when I was 14, and I've been writing ever since. And then somewhere along the line, I started feeling the same way about software development. I grew up, I graduated from high school in the mid-'80s, so I was right during the middle of all that, so the software just booming, getting started. And the same thing, I didn't want to just watch it, I wanted to be a part of it. So those three things, game designer, writer, and software, were all just things I loved, and they were all things I wanted to do. And so I've just done them. I really am someone who believes in doing what you love and, taking your best shot at whatever it is. And in my case, it happens to be three different things. But it's great. And I think the three help each other. I think that, there are lessons to be learned in each of the three disciplines that I follow that carry over into the other. So I think it's worked out really well for me.
Oh, wow. That is neat. It's also neat to know that you create different board games and card games. So what experience led you to becoming a game designer?
Oh, great question. So like I said, I always loved playing games. And for me, when I was growing up, I had different games that I played with different people. My mom and I played cribbage. My grandfather and I played backgammon. My brother and I played chess. We all had different games that we played together. And as I grew up to be an adult, I kept playing games, all sorts of different kinds of games. And I started to see other people when they would get together with family and sometimes friends, they didn't really have anything to do with those people. They were there and they were spending time together, but they very quickly ran out of kind of a reason to be there, for lack of a better way of saying it. And so for me, seeing that, I thought that the games filled a real need, that they bring people together and they give them a way to spend time together and a common interest and something to share. And that was why I founded Live Oak Games, because the mission of that company was to design games to bring people together. And so that's what got me into designing games professionally. And I still do. I design games now, Live Oak, instead of producing games. We license games to other companies. We did Distractions for Think Fun. And then our most recent one is actually a puzzle book, series of math puzzle books, for a company called Mindware. The books are called Math Finders.
Oh, that's awesome. Passion number 2 is writing. So, Pat, please share with us how your writing led you to launching your weekly column in the Seminole Chronicle, Daddy Tales, that turned into a blog.
Sure. So I have always written, as I said, I have always written as a hobby. And I wrote sometimes just for myself. Sometimes I'd write things to share with friends. As I got into the software world and doing more and more software development, I found myself, because I enjoyed writing, I found myself writing things for that world, manuals, help systems, that kind of stuff, in addition to my software development. And of course, designing games and writing games, you have to write the instructions for them. So writing has kind of always been in my life in one form or another. And when I had a new child, when my oldest son was born, I found myself writing stories about life as a new dad. And I didn't know anything about being a dad. I was a classic, and I still am, a classic parent who is just making it up as I go along. And the stories I found were really, really funny, just because of the mistakes that I made and the things that happened. And so it was a lot of fun. I started writing them down, and someone saw them and said, you should actually try to get these published. So I went to the Seminole Chronicle and pitched it, and it ended up being a newspaper article that I wrote for, I think it was 6 years. The paper went out of business, unfortunately, but it was a really good run when we had it. And I did the blog as kind of a support for that newspaper article. Now the newspaper's gone. I'm still maintaining the blog at daddytales.com. And it's still fun writing them. So that's kind of, and then that, once I started doing that really, that really increased my passion or increased my desire. So I started writing more and more, and I had my first book published by Scholastic in 2013. It's called Dragon Run.
So it just turned into an evolution of writing, and that resulted in a book. So do you think you're going to do other books, or what? Oh,
absolutely, yeah. Now that I have the bug, it's for me, the more I do something I love, the more I want to do something I love. So I have my first book out, and I'm working on other books and working with my agent to try to get them homes and publishers.
Okay. Well, best wishes with that. So Pat, your software development journey started in the financial industry, where you created trailblazing software. So what is your strategy to remaining confident in your skills and abilities when creating software resources?
Oh, that's a great question, and that is the biggest challenge in the technical world, in the software development world. When I started out as a computer programmer, I was writing DOS applications, and then those evolved, and then from there I started writing Windows applications, and then after the Windows applications, web applications, and now I'm comfortable doing development either on the server side of a website or web application, or on the client side. So all of those technologies are just new and new and new. Each one comes down the pipe, and there's something new, and there's new stuff coming every week. So the challenge is to stay current, to see what's happening in the industry, to try to figure out what's coming next. But the good news on that is that once you have a certain amount of experience in the software development world, once you have established ways of thinking and you can see processes as they happen, the new technologies aren't nearly as hard to bring on board. A good friend of mine once said he didn't care what language he was writing in, because he knew how to develop software, and the language was just a detail. I don't know if I would go quite that far, but there's certainly an element of truth in that you learn your core fundamentals, and you build on them, and you expand them, and then you just try to learn new technologies as they come out.
So how has your abilities to create games, write and develop software, connected you to pursue the product manager role with the social media networking site?
Oh, wow. Okay, so product manager is a really interesting position, and it means different things in different companies. For me, I'm all about product. I'm all about creating, whether it is writing a book or writing a newspaper column or developing a software package or designing a game and bringing a game to market. All of those things are different types of products. And all of those products, there are similarities and there are differences, but because they're in different worlds, the things you have to worry about when you're designing a game for a mass market game or a game for the general public have some similarities and some differences from when you're designing a book or from when you're working on a huge software application like what Got Chosen is doing. And so it's all still product, though, and that's what I love. I love that creation. I love that the detail work, the bringing it to life kind of thing. And what I found is that there's a lot of overlap between the different areas, and there are also lots of new ways of thinking. When you're each of those different disciplines has different ways of thinking about the problem, different solutions, and I found that some of those solutions cross over really well. So in my role as product manager at Got Chosen, I'm bringing everything I've got. I'm bringing the experience as a game designer, my experience as writing books and newspaper columns, and my software development experience, and all of those different experiences that I've had over the past few decades. I'm really bringing to bear on with Got Chosen and trying to help craft the best product we can make.
Okay, so I'm going to get a little personal, Pat, and ask you, what makes you laugh?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's an easy one. Life details, my kids in a huge way. There's just no two ways about it. Life in my world, everything is funny. I give you an example. The other day my youngest son and I were in CVS just to pick up a prescription, and while we were waiting for it to be done, while we were waiting for him to fill the prescription, we wandered around the store and we went to the toy aisle, and the toy aisle was pretty typical, nothing that really grabbed our attention, except for this giant red button that said "Press Me" in big white letters. And my son looked at me, and I looked at him, and he's like, "I gotta press it." I'm like, "I know." So he reaches over and he presses the button, and then there's a dinging noise over the intercom of the store, and a voice says, "Customer needs assistance in the toy aisle. Customer needs assistance in the toy aisle."
No.
So he panics, and I start saying loudly, "No, we don't. No, we don't. We're fine." And the two of us hurried out of the toy aisle as fast as we could. So, but that kind of thing seems to happen to me everywhere. And it's hilarious, and it just keeps everything fresh and funny.
Oh, awesome memories, awesome memories. So I believe that success triggers are vital to living out your dreams and goals. So Pat, do you practice success attraction strategies? And if yes, please share a few that has served you well along the way of your career path.
Oh, sure. And actually, this is a great example of what I was talking about with the different disciplines complementing each other. When you start out in the world of writing, when you start studying to be a writer, and when you're in school learning to be a writer, you will hear the same thing over and over again. You'll hear people telling you not to do things, or to do things differently, or to look for the weaknesses in your work and try to overcome them. You'll be told to make sure you get the voice right, and make sure you don't have echoes, and all the grammar is correct, and the structure is correct, and all of these things, all of these rules. And it can be paralyzing. You're trying to write, but you've got all these things in your head, all these landmines you're supposed to watch out for. And years ago, I was working with someone, actually her name was Jamie Morris, and she said, instead of that, look for what works. When you pick up a book and you're reading the book, instead of seeing all these things the author did wrong, instead of seeing all the things you would do differently, see what makes it work really well. See why it's sold. See why people love it. And that for me was a real eye-opener. It was kind of a real changing moment. And that is my biggest success strategy, is to focus on what works. And not just look for it in the product. Look for it in other people. Look for it in yourself. Focus on what works and see what works. And yes, you need to be aware of weaknesses, and yes, you need to find problems and that kind of stuff. That side of things is just what you have to do. If your focus is on what works, if your focus is on what's effective, I find things just work better and better. You get more effective. You emphasize the positives. And it's transcended just my writing world to software, to games, to even just relationships, because it's really easy, especially when you're mad, to look at someone and say, I hate this, I hate that, I hate this. But if you stop yourself and you start focusing on the good things, on what works, all of that negative energy just goes away, and it frees you up to really do your best work. So if I had to pick one success strategy, that's it. Look for what works, focus on it, and go there.
Great advice. So you've already positioned yourself, Pat, that your professional efforts and outcomes will educate and inspire generations for years to come. So how do you plan to continue your legacy adventure and keep it fun and positively memorable?
Oh my, just more and better and more fun, and look for more opportunities. Like I said before, that the more I follow my passions, the more things open up, and it really is true. A few years ago, I was working in a game world, and a friend of mine approached me about a project, and now I'm the editor, and I work with her on a site called Games for Educators. That's all about supporting the use of games in education. It's about helping teachers and parents and anybody who's educating find fun ways to engage kids and fun ways to engage students, and really get them learning. And that's just one example of many of just staying with what I love, focusing on the fun, focusing on the creativity, on what works, and doors and windows just open up, and then you just keep going, just keep trying to work on my craft, whether the craft is writing or software development or game design. Focus on the craft, focus on the product, make things as good as they can. And I think we've got chosen in particular with the social exchange that we're building. That's a really big software project. It could, I hope, it really could change the way the internet works, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that.
Trailblazer. So, Pat, who has impacted you the most to be your personal best and accomplish greatness?
Well, this will sound a little corny, but I will say my wife, June, and I'll point to a specific moment really that, again, was a turning point for me. Years ago, I was developing software. Writing was just a hobby. The game design thing was just kind of a hobby. Excuse me. And she worked at the time as a pediatric social worker in the pediatric ICU of Arnold Palmer. So her job, a large part of her job, was helping parents and families deal with just the most horrible things you can imagine, the injuries to tiny little babies. And we were sitting together at dinner one night, and I asked her how her day was, and she described this amazingly meaningful experience with her counseling a family and helping them deal with this trauma they were going through in their life. And she finished, and she asked how my day was, and I was like, well, I wrote some code. And for me, it was just a realization that what I was doing had to be bigger than that. That I had to find things that were meaningful, to me, not just fun, but fun and important. And that was when I started thinking about games, and that was when I launched Live Oak Games as a way to help bring people together. And that has really become that. It's interesting to have a moment like that become a part of you, but it really has sunk into me. So if I had to pick someone, who has really helped me be my best, it would definitely be my wife, and that moment is just one example of many.
Love it. Please share a book that you suggest to be a lighthearted, inspirational, and encouraging read.
Okay, so I am not perhaps the traditional executive, or the traditional entrepreneur. I'm a children's author. The books that I write are all for kids, and I read a lot of kids' books also. And if I had to pick a book that would definitely be one I'd recommend, and one that is a driving thing, it's called "Oh, the Places You Go" by Dr. Seuss, and it is just it's crazy. It's the kind of thing that it just comes back to you, and it's just a ton of fun. So it sounds a little simplistic, it's not at the level perhaps as some of the some of the more complicated ones, but the places you go for me is that sums it all up.
That's one of my favorite books. I think it's a fantastic graduation gift at any level, kindergarten to college.
I think that was it. I think that actually might have been a graduation speech that he turned into a book. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that suggestion for our listeners. And so I'm a lover of affirmations, and I want to end this episode of the Confidence Conversation with this affirmation. My interests and ideas turn into profitable outcomes that I have fun exploring continually. So, Pat, thank you for being a part of our podcast today. Thank you for joining me, and please share how our listeners can get in touch with you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. And for reaching me, I've got a bunch of websites. The easiest one to get to is pat-matthews.com. It's pat, dash, like minus sign, Matthews.com. And from there you can see links to all of my other stuff, my books, my games, everything. And I look forward to hearing from anybody that has any more questions. Just log on there, shoot me an email, or jump onto the social exchange. It got chosen. Connect and send me a message, and I'll be happy to talk.
Fantastic. And you can find me at careertipper.com or on Instagram at careertipper. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Confidence Conversation. We are grateful for our listeners and guests. For more career confidence motivation, resources, and to share your comments and feedback about this episode and share future guest suggestions, visit careertipper.com. Until next time, be career confident.